Fantasy football season is upon us. It is time to get ready to draft your teams. And right now, I'm going to give you my top 24 quarterbacks with tiers, give you the best idea on who you're drafting. Let's get into it right now. All right. What's going on, folks? My name is Michael Hoff. You can follow me on X at the FF Realist. Most importantly, this is the FF Face Off. And today, like I said, top 24 quarterbacks. Let's get into tier one. And it's what I consider to be the fantasy football elite. It's going to be two quarterbacks, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. You can interchange the two if you want to rank them differently. I don't mind. I'm not going to fight with you on it. But for me, going into this year, Josh Allen is my quarterback one, currently going off the board as a QB1, ADP of 2.10. Finishes a QB2 last season. Along with that, 4 games of 30 or more points. And by the way, over the last 2 years, Josh Allen has had more games with 20 or more points than any other quarterback in fantasy football. To be exact, that would be 23 games over the last 2 seasons. That's pretty darn good. And on top of that, this one's like, you talk about when you spend draft capital, right? When you take a player at the top of his position, you usually have to spend a premium for that position. Josh Allen, to me, is the most reassuring draft capital purchase you can make. Over the last 5 years, Josh Allen has been a top 3 quarterback. You simply can't guarantee more than that. I mean, yes, maybe injuries happen, maybe other things happen, but Josh Allen giving you that kind of reassurance, like, hey, trust me, I've been a top 5 quarterback the last 3 years. I will ride that lightning. I've done it before. I'll do it again. So along with that too, if there's any concern about his weapons, there really shouldn't be. It didn't affect him last year when Stephon Diggs wasn't around. Again, guy was an MVP, finishes a QB2. I'm not going to lose any sleep over drafting Josh Allen. It's just about roster construction. After that, rounding out tier one, Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens. Currently going off the board as a QB2, ADP of 2.12. While he didn't win the MVP, he did finish as a QB1 last season. He led all quarterbacks last year with 20 or more points in 82.4% of his games. We talk about how important rushing the ball is for a quarterback, how valuable that is for your fantasy football drafts. Well, he's had 6 straight seasons of 700 yards. That's like just as good or a little less than that stat about Josh Allen being a top 3 quarterback. It's just automatic. You know you're getting the rushing yards. You know they're coming. And to anybody who was concerned about Derrick Henry last year, didn't seem to stop Lamar Jackson from still getting those rushing yards. Last but not least, last year, only 1 game with less than 10 points, so that felt pretty darn good. So that's my tier 1. Let's get into tier 2. And my quarterback 3 here is going to be Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals, currently going off the board as a QB5, ADP of 4.05. This is the tier where they're just about elite, but if you want to slap a concern on them, even if it's minimal at best, you can. So Joe Burrow finished last year as a quarterback 3, led the league with 300 passing yards in 7 games. By the way, 37 points during those 2 championship weeks for fantasy football. I know that because he buried me. Here's the thing with Joe Burrow, which helps his cause, doesn't help the Bengals, but future defense, absolutely terrible defense. We saw it last year. We're going to see it again this year. That's not a prediction. That's a spoiler, a la Paul Heyman. But the other concern that I have, well, that's not a concern, but the concern I have, I should say, is Joe Burrow starting slow. In the first 4 games of the last 2 seasons, Joe Burrow has averaged 12.31 points per game. That's not what you want when you're spending the draft capital of the 4th pick, of the 5th pick in the 4th round. I apologize. You want to know that you're going to come out of the gate swinging on that one. You don't want to be losing any sleep. So that's one thing. Now, listen, do you want to attribute that to him getting comfortable with the wrist injury? Can we attribute it to weather or other conditions or maybe the schedule? Be that as it may, I'm not telling you to not draft the guy clearly. I'm just putting it on your radar. But by the way, Joe Burrow is my QB3, which is higher than most. If we get into my fourth quarterback, it's going to be Mr. Jaden Daniels, who is going off the board as a quarterback 3. To be specific, his ADP right now is the seventh pick of the third round. I will flip flop that and get that correct in 1 second. He finished as a QB5 last year in his rookie campaign. Surprised a lot of people. Didn't surprise everybody, though. Some people were believers. One of 2 quarterbacks with more than 25 rushes, more than 10 yards, 10 games with 20-plus points. By the way, second in quarterback rushing with 891 yards. I mean, does that go down? It could, but does it go down significantly? I don't think so. I think Jaden Daniels is a rushing quarterback through and through, and I think we're going to see that for a while. If I have any concern here about Jaden Daniels, which again, minimal, it's not going to tell me that I'm not drafting him. It's just the whole Terry McLaurin situation. How much does that affect the offense? Because even when Terry signs, we've seen players before, a la Brandon Ayuk last year, who hold out, hold in, and then when they finally get signed, they haven't been practicing, so they start off slow. How much does that affect you in those first few weeks? Because fantasy football is not like fantasy baseball if you're doing a daily league or what, like those games are crucial every single week. So I want to know that my quarterback's not going to be struggling out of the gate because he's got a number 1 wide receiver who held out and now he can't get right. Again, I don't know. I think they'll work it out. I'm not too worried about Jaden Daniels at all, but it was enough for me to put him at number 4 right now. The last thing, too, is Debo still Debo? Debo's going to help that offense, but God forbid Terry's not signed by week 1, which I don't think happens. Debo's got to become that number 1 wide receiver again. Can he still do it? I don't know. I think he can be more productive than people are giving him credit for on social media, but I don't think he is what he once was. So, but again, Jane Daniels is going to be just fine. He's going to get his rushing yards. He's going to get his touchdown passes. He's going to be a top 5 quarterback. No doubt about it. For me, he's number 4 right now. Last quarterback that we will go to here. Actually, we have 2 more in this tier. Rounding out the rest of tier 2 with 2 quarterbacks, it's going to be Jalen Hurts and then Baker Mayfield. Jalen Hurts is my number 5 quarterback. Baker Mayfield's my number 6 quarterback. If we're going into Jalen Hurts here, he finishes a QB8 last season, currently going off the board as a QB4, ADP of 4.04. He's had 4 straight seasons with double-digit rushing touchdowns. Not a lot of quarterbacks can say that, and that saves him from the amount of touchdowns he thrown last year, which was 18. Now, I think that that's going to improve a little bit, but not enough to bump him up that high. Again, I have my QB5. I've got him finishing 3 spots ahead of where he did last year. And really, because the rushing touchdowns aren't going to change. The tush push is alive and well. It still has not been banned. So I could see 5 straight years of double-digit rushing touchdowns, which for a quarterback is pretty crazy. He only had 2 games last year with less than 10 points. I think the passing yardage goes up a little bit. He had 29.03. Because I don't think that Saquon Barkley gets as many carries as he did last year. He got a ton if you look between the regular season and the playoffs. So with that in mind, I'm going to bump up Jalen Hurts a little bit from where he finished last year. Even though he's going off the board as a QB4, I got him at the QB5. Again, rounding out tier 2, I just mentioned him earlier. It's Baker Mayfield of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Currently going off the board as a QB7, ADP of 6.12. He finished as a QB4 last season. If I told you a few years ago Baker Mayfield will be finishing the year as the QB4, you would have been calling the men in white coats. 20 games with 20 points or more, just like Jaden Daniels. 6 games with 300 passing yards, one shy of Joe Burrow and what he was doing. And he's one of 5 quarterbacks with 20 or more rushes of 10-plus yards. Now, I will say that's a little uncharacteristic of the Joe Burrow that we've come to know and love. But so I don't know if that replicates. That's why I'm dropping him a bit in my rankings here. And also because I don't know, this is my concern with him, I don't know if the touchdowns are going to be the same. 41 touchdown passes last year. Does that happen again? I don't think so. I don't think it's a dramatic slip. And to those who are worried about the offensive coordinator changing, well, the offensive coordinator changed last year too. Dave Canales went to the Carolina Panthers, didn't seem to hurt Baker Mayfield much. So I'm going to be okay there with drafting Baker Mayfield, making him my sixth ranked quarterback. But let's get into tier three of my quarterbacks. And this is still QB1 territory for me. But I'm going to go first with Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott, if he's got any concern, it's staying well, the offensive line is not what it should be, but it's staying healthy. But when he plays, he's incredible. Right now, he's going off the board as a QB 13. So I keep saying not enough people are talking about Dak Prescott. And that ADP of the first pick of the 11th round just proves it to you. Played in only 8 games last year due to a torn hamstring. Finished as a QB 32. He was on pace, though, for 20 touchdown passes and over 4,000 yards. So that's pretty darn good. And those kind of numbers should be good enough to get you into top 12 territory, to be honest with you. Over the last 2 years, the Cowboys have been top 3 in pass attempts on a per game basis. When you look at, I've mentioned the offensive line already, but especially when you look at the running game, when you look at that running back room, no disrespect to those boys in there, but it's clear the Cowboys are looking at being top 3 in passing yards for a third straight season. His 2023 offensive coordinator, Bronton Schottenheimer, is now his head coach. The offensive line isn't what it used to be, like I said. That's the big concern here. But still, I like Dak Prescott to produce this year. I think that so far of all my picks is where you can get some serious value at the quarterback position. Getting into my number 8 quarterback, Rocky Mountain High, Mr. Bo Nix of the Denver Broncos, currently going off the board as a QB8, ADP of 7.10. Finished as a QB7 last season. So I do have him one spot back, but that's more about competition at the position. It has less to do with Bo Nix himself. He did start the year slow. In the first 4 games, he was a quarterback 22, averaging 11.3 points per game. That's not what you want. The rest of the year, though, he was a QB5. That point per game average jumped up to 20.9 points. Went from 11.3 to 20.9 after the first 4 games once Bo Nix got his legs under him, so to speak. And, Sean Payton is still molding this offense to be what it can be, to have Bo Nix excel and be a top fantasy football quarterback. There were 2 things that I wanted this year. I wanted the Broncos to get a running back, and I wanted them to get Evan Ingram. Now, by the way, he keeps saying that, we'll see about RJ Harvey. We have a talented running back room. I think RJ Harvey's starting. I think RJ Harvey's going to get a ton of receptions. Bo Nix will benefit from that. And Evan Ingram, they keep talking about the Joker mode. But if you're old enough to see what Sean Payton has done before with tight ends, you should feel pretty good about that. Again, these are all things that are beneficial to Bo Nix to open up this offense more than what it was last year when he finished as a QB7. So QB8 for me is going to be Bo Nix. QB9, I'm going to go with my guy, Brock Purdy of the San Francisco 49ers, currently going off the board as QB12. So there's value there. I like the value more so, though, with Dak Prescott. Currently going with the board as QB12. ADP of 10.04, finishes a QB 13 last season. He finished as a QB6, though, in 2023. And I know it's easy to just throw that out there and be like, whatever happened. But you look at what happened last year to San Francisco. We all know it was decimated by injuries. It was decimated by every single unfortunate event that could happen. They had one of the hardest schedules in the NFL, as per Warren Sharp. They had one of the worst rest differentials in the NFL. That has now changed. They now have one of the easiest schedules in the NFL. They have one of the best rest differentials in the NFL. And yes, there's still the injuries. I think that they get Juwan Jennings done before toe meets ball. Last year, he had 7 games with 20 or more points. He had 8 the year prior. The problem with last year was he had 4 games with less than 10 points. That 2023 season I mentioned when he finished as a QB6, he only had 1 game with less than 10 points. So I think things jump up from there. And by the way, yards per attempt dropped from 9.2 in 2023 to 8.5 last season. But he's also one of 2 quarterbacks to rank in the top 5 in passes thrown the past 2 seasons. Lamar Jackson's the other one. So, yards per pass, I apologize. Top 5 in yards per pass over the last 2 seasons. Only one of 2 quarterbacks to be top 5 in that. So, I like Brock Purdy. I think Brock Purdy rebounds. I'm a believer in Christian McCaffrey staying healthy. I also buy into very much George Kittle being neighbors now with Brock Purdy. I think they're going to be in sync, and I think that that's perfect given the situation with the wide receiver depth chart. So Brock Purdy is going to be my 9th ranked quarterback. If I can go to quarterback 10, this might be more interesting than my quarterback 9. It's going to be Justin Fields of the New York Jets. And yeah, I get it. We're all a little bit worried about Justin Fields.
The goddamn Jets.
But listen, he was a QB8 in points per game before being benched for Russell Wilson, which, again, Justin Fields didn't lose his job last year because he wasn't playing well. Justin Fields lost his job because that was what everybody expected, was that once Russell Wilson was healthy, he was the quarterback. Unlike last year, though, there's no one really waiting to bench him this year. Have fun making a case for Tyrod Taylor. Justin Fields would have to be so bad for Tyrod Taylor to come in. And by the way, he was the quarterback 6 and the quarterback 13 in points per game in when he played 2 basically full seasons for the Chicago Bears. I'm going to take that. I'm going to take those numbers. I believe Aaron Glenn believes in him. I think he's also going to be able to run the ball. Got the rushing dynamic. We talked about it with Lamar Jackson. We talked about it with Jaden Daniels, with Jalen Hurts. So I think it's obviously there with Justin Fields. We can't diminish that. So, and being paired with Garrett Wilson, I think that means something. There is some sense of a connection from their days at Ohio State. Does this mean that Justin Fields is going to be Peyton Manning? No, but between better passing numbers and his rushing floor, I think he could finish inside the top 12. I got him at top 10 right now. And then if we can go into another quarterback here, we have 2 more quarterbacks in this tier. Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, I got him ranked behind Justin Fields. That happened. He's going off the board as a QB6, ADP of 5.12. The last 3 years, right? 2022, QB1. 2023, QB8. 2024, QB12. So I'm giving him one spot better because I think the offense is a little bit better. But here's the other thing, too. Of all the quarterbacks that I have ranked in my top 12, I think Pat Mahomes is going to be one of the more inconsistent quarterbacks. If you look at his consistency last year, it was not great. In terms of points per game, Mahomes finished as a QB 14 and QB 13 over the last 2 seasons. And, here's the other thing. Among quarterbacks that finished in the top 12 last season, Mahomes had the second fewest points per game with 17.5. Among that top 12, Mahomes had the fewest games of 20 or more points with 4. Not to completely crush him, though. He only had 1 game with less than 12 points. But that's a thing is, for the first time in his career, Pat Mahomes is fantasy football mid. Is this him for the rest of his career? No. But as long as he has a great defense like this, yeah, because he's not asked to do a lot. He doesn't need to do a lot. He doesn't need to succeed for our fantasy football team. So Pat Mahomes here for me, quarterback 11. I still put him in my top 12, but I am a little worried about him. He's probably not going to be a guy I'm going to have rostered a ton. My number 12 quarterback rounding out tier 3 is going to be Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers. Currently going off the board as a QB 11, ADP of 10.02. We'll be quick on this one. He did finish as a QB 11. He didn't have a top 12 week until week 8, but, that was also, by the way, his first game of 20 more points. But he was a quarterback 5 in the second half of the season. I talked about Bo Nix and where he was ranked once he got his legs under him. If there's anything worrisome about Herbert, it is the injuries. We seem to have a lot of injuries. Rashawn Slater, obviously out for the year. We've seen some wide receivers dinged up. Obviously, Najee Harris had too much fun with fireworks on the 4th of July. So there are concerns here with the offense for the Chargers, but I still think Herbert can do well enough to finish as a top 12 quarterback. We'll get into tier 4 now, and this is kind of my fringe QB1, early QB2. JJ McCarthy is at 13 for me. I got to tell you, I wanted to rank him higher. He's currently going off the board as a QB 19, ADP of 12.10. He didn't play last season. Obviously, we all know this. And I just referenced Justin Herbert, who started slow because he had to get acclimated to that Greg Roman offense. I mentioned Bo Nix starting slow, then taking off. I'm telling you, I'm not telling you to not draft JJ McCarthy, but what I'm telling you is I could see him after the first couple of weeks. I think next year we're going to tell you the same thing that what Bo Nix did, where he was one of the top quarterbacks in fantasy. I think JJ McCarthy will be one of the top quarterbacks in fantasy, whether that's from the midpoint on, whether it's after the first 4 or 5 games. Because it's just JJ McCarthy. He's not a bad quarterback. He's got the potential. I know we haven't seen a ton of him for NFL purposes. Only had that one preseason game, but also, look at the weapons. He's got some of the best weapons in the NFL. Jordan Addison, who will have a suspension. Justin Jefferson, clearly one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. And TJ Hawkinson, 1 year removed from that knee injury. I think that will be beneficial for JJ McCarthy as well. So JJ McCarthy is my QB 13. QB 14, we'll stick with the NFC North. I'm going to go with Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions. Going off the board as a QB 10, ADP of 9.02. Last year, incredible year. Finished as a QB 6. Had a career high in touchdowns. He had a career high quarterback rating, and he had his highest passing yards as a member of the Detroit Lions. So why do we drop off? Listen, I know it's the most redundant thing of the NFL offseason, but we can have a conversation about Jared Goff before the 2025 season kicks off without talking about the departure of Ben Johnson. I'm sorry. It's there. It's a thing. It's just a matter of if you want to believe in it or not. The loss of Frank Ragnow, that's also something. Some believe that Jared Goff can defy these odds. I personally don't. Well, I don't think he's going to be a sinking rock to the bottom of the ocean. I believe this is going to be the first time Jared Goff in the last 3 years will finish outside the top 10 among fantasy football quarterbacks. So that's why I've got him ranked at 14. I won't be shocked if he finishes better than 14, but this is where I have him. Again, a lot of it has to do with competition at the position. My quarterback 15 is Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is currently going off the board as a quarterback 9, ADP of 8.09. I don't like that investment at all. That investment would need to drop for me. I would much rather have Dak Prescott in the 11th round than Kyler Murray in the 8th. That's even with the injury concern. He finished as the QB 10 last year, but much like Pat Mahomes, he is super inconsistent. He was 14 in points per game last year, 10 in points per game in 2023. That was him returning from his injury. But if we're getting into it a little bit further, if there's a good thing about Kyler Murray is that among the quarterbacks in the top 12 last season, he was tied for the third lowest percentage of games with less than 10 points with 11.8. But like I said, quarterbacks who finished in the top 12, talked about Pat Mahomes earlier, when he was the second fewest on a points per game basis. Kyler Murray was number 1 with 17.5 points on a per game basis. He also averaged at least 30 plus rushing yards in all 6 years of his NFL career. Along with that, 5 rushing touchdowns. So we have that, but he's just so darn inconsistent in the passing game. I have a hard time trusting Kyler Murray. I'm not going to have a lot of shares of Kyler Murray at all. I have to give some respect to, even though he's going to be inconsistent, he's still going to get fantasy points. That's why he's at 15 and not buried any further. I know this will be controversial. People have him a lot higher, but that's where I'm putting Kyler Murray right now. I just simply don't trust the guy. If I'm getting into another pick in my tier 4 here of my top 24 quarterback rankings, it's going to be Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers going off the board as the QB 16, ADP of 11.09, finished as a QB 17 last year. I will say, of all my rankings, this is one of the rankings where I feel like it could blow up in my face. It's important to remember, by the way, that Jordan Love, while he finished as a quarterback 17, he might not have looked like what he did in the playoff games before he got the contract against the Cowboys and against the 49ers. But we can't forget the first game of the 2024 season against the Eagles in Brazil when he had the knee injury. A lot of people feared the worst. He was able to come back quick, but Did that hinder him? We're going to find out. Is he going to be a better quarterback this year? We shall see. Between that and competition at the position, this is just where I have him ranked when I put in the numbers. And also that said, Green Bay was fifth in rushing attempts on a per game basis last year with 30.06. I don't see them straying away from that too hard, but listen, Matthew Golden's there. We'll see about the rest of the wide receivers. It's always kind of been a game of Russian roulette in terms of fantasy football, in terms of which wide receiver is going to do better on a per week basis. But Jordan Love for me right now, QB 16. Again, that can completely blow up in my face. We shall see. Should be a good time. Going on to the next QB 17, Caleb Williams of the Chicago Bears, going off the borders of QB 14, ADP of 11.03. Finishes a QB 16 last season. 9 games with less than 10 points, though. Not great, Bob. Sacked 68 times, more than any other quarterback in the top 10 in average time to throw. And by the way, he was tied for third all time with David Carr back in 2005. On average, he was sacked 4 times on a per game basis. That is the most since Carson Wentz since 2020. I will say this. Ben Johnson's there. I talked about how it's a deterrent for Jared Goff, my rankings. It's a good thing for Caleb Williams, obviously. How could it not be? I expect the play action percentage to go up. Under Ben Johnson, Goff led the league with 36.6 and then 24.5 the year prior. Caleb Williams had 17.3. It was ranked 32 out of 35 quarterbacks. So I think play action percentage goes up. I think that could help Caleb Williams. I'm just not completely sold on how consistent Caleb Williams is going to be. So listen, if I'm in a 2-quarterback league, will I shoot my shot on Caleb Williams at some point? That's kind of where these quarterbacks are. They are that QB2 that you're going to look for. Yeah, go ahead. I'll do that. And I do think that the sacks get better in terms of you won't get as many. We know that they revamped the offensive line. The Chicago Bears always win the offseason. This is nothing new. They did a great job, but I need to see it happen. So for now, I'm going to rank him at QB 17, and we'll see what happens from there. Rounding out my top 4 tier is going to be my quarterback 18, Mr. Drake Maye of the New England Patriots. Another quarterback entering his sophomore season. Another quarterback who has a brand new head coach. So Drake Maye right now is currently going off the board as a QB 18, ADP of 11.12. Finished as a QB 22 last season, played in just 13 games. Only 1 game with 20 or more points. Don't love that. But what I do like about Drake Maye is that he showed improvement. After failing to throw a touchdown in 2 of his first 4 games, Maye went on to have 8 straight games with at least 1 touchdown pass. So he did kind of fix whatever was going on in those first 4 games. He adjusted. That's a good thing. That's what you want to see from a rookie quarterback. 9th in rushing yards with 421. That's a sneaky stat. A lot of people don't realize that. And that's not, I mentioned Baker Mayfield earlier on his rushing. This is not some kind of anomaly with Drake Maye. It's not some kind of outlier. It's a thing. I mean, if you want to go back to college, the last 2 years he had in North Carolina, he averaged 573.5 rushing yards in both of his, in those 2 seasons. So the rushing yards have always been there for Drake Maye. So I think that's going to continue, especially if he's playing a whole season. Remember, this was just 13 games with 421 rushing yards. And here's something interesting. As per Mike Wright of the Fantasy Footballers, Maye is one of 8 rookie quarterbacks since 2000 to rush for 30 or more yards per game as a rookie. That's some territory where we didn't expect Drake Maye to be. At least I didn't, but he's there. And when you're getting a quarterback who can rush and you're getting him late, that could be very valuable for a quarterback too. I'm not telling you to take him if you're in a 12-team league with 1 quarterback. I'm not telling you to take him. At that point, he's like a bye week option. He's a streaming option depending on who you draft as your quarterback. But I mean, that is impressive. Much like Caleb Williams, they did work to beef up the offensive line. 3 new starters over the offseason. I would say don't judge this rank too hard. I still think Stephon Diggs, I think he's going to be just fine. I think he's going to be a great option. I think he's going to be a great value in fantasy football. And if you're in a 2 quarterback league, I think Drake May can be a nice value too. So he rounds out that tier 4 for me. We'll go into tier 5 as we get ready to run out of these top 24 quarterbacks. One of them might be a surprise. Probably. We'll see. He's probably pictured there. Anyway, let's get to quarterback 19. Quarterback 19 is Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Currently going off the board as a QB 20, ADP of 13.09. Finished as a quarterback 27, but only played in 10 games. We all remember that concussion, that gnarly concussion he had at home, which basically took him out. But now we've got Liam Cohen sitting over there in Jacksonville. As corny as he is, I think he's going to help that offense immensely.
Duval.
Taking a look at that, I think there's improvement that could be had here with Trevor Lawrence. I like some of the I like what he's got at some of the positions here. You look at what Liam Cohen has done before. He's worked in college. He's worked with the Rams. He obviously worked with the Buccaneers last year. Their success, I think that can translate to Trevor Lawrence. Now, is Trevor Lawrence going to be on the cover of Madden next year? No, but I do think he's going to be one of the best back end quarterback twos that you can have. And I think, again, like I mentioned some of my rankings earlier, I thought Jordan Love could bust my rankings. I think Trevor Lawrence could bust my rankings, but not to be top 12, but he could venture up 4 spots or so from where I have him at the QB 19 right now. So Trevor Lawrence, I think, is in line for some improvement. We're going to go to everybody's favorite quarterback to hate, except for me and Pete Nova. It's Aaron Rodgers of the now Pittsburgh Steelers, currently going off the board as a QB 29, ADP of 19.03. This is what people don't understand. Aaron Rodgers finished as a QB 15 last season. Right now, as per Sleeper, Aaron Rodgers is being drafted behind Anthony Richardson. That is the most asinine thing. I don't care what you hate about Aaron Rodgers, the ayahuasca, the running his mouth on the Pat McAfee show, his politics. I don't care. His relationship with his family. I do not care. There is no world in which Anthony Richardson this year finishes with more fantasy points than Aaron Rodgers. It's not going to happen. I'm physically telling you, it's not going to happen. I like Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be a top 24 quarterback. I don't think he's going to finish 15th or better like he did last year, though, because I do think Arthur Smith is going to want to run the ball. It's not going to be, I think it's going to be a collaboration between the two. It might get heated sometimes, but so he's not going to finish QB 15 or better like he did last year, but in his swan song, Aaron Rodgers will be a top 24 quarterback. I think he's going to make things happen there with DK Metcalf. We've seen what he does with Devontae Adams. He's going to, when he's got his favorite target, he's going to pepper them. He's going to pepper the hell out of DK Metcalf. So I like Aaron Rodgers here to finish good enough for 20th in my rankings in tier 5. We'll get to the next quarterback, Geno Smith of the now Las Vegas Raiders, currently going off the board as a QB 27, ADP of 18.09, finished as a QB 14 last season. Last year he had 21 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing. He's now back with Pete Carroll. While it's in a different location, no longer in Seattle. He's now in Las Vegas with Carroll, where when he was with Carroll, he finished as a QB 5 and the QB 19. Between competition at the position, though, and Ashton Genty being drafted to the Las Vegas Raiders, this is why I think Geno Smith will be serviceable. Again, I think he's a good quarterback too. You're not all these names I'm mentioning in tier 5. There's no world in which you should do a 12-team draft and this should be your only quarterback. That would be bad. Don't do that. But Geno Smith, I think, could be serviceable in 2 quarterback leagues. This is why I have him sitting at 21, though. The Raiders had the 4th most pass attempts on a per-game basis last year and the 4th fewest rush attempts on a per-game basis. You can't tell me that that's going to remain the same with Ashton Genty there now. It's just simply not going to happen. So, couple of that, he also keep in mind he has a lesser receiving core with the Raiders than he did in those seasons when he was with Carroll in Seattle. So when you take all that together, I think Geno Smith will be good. I don't think he's going to be terrible, but I've got him sitting here as my quarterback 21, and that's okay. There's no disrespect. Getting into my quarterback 22, this is where there's some disrespect. I feel like some people might think it's CJ Stroud. You know, he's currently going off the board as what, the QB 17, ADP of 11.1. Finished as the quarterback 18 last season. Jordan Love and Justin Fields are going before Stroud. I would rather have both of those quarterbacks, obviously, as per my rankings. So I don't like CJ Stroud this year. I simply don't. And if I could pull up some other notes here that I have on CJ Stroud, the dip last year was absolutely alarming. Not to mention the offensive line isn't much better. He dropped significantly in some of these rankings. He went from the quarterback 9 in his rookie season to the quarterback 18 last season. He had 6 games of 20 or more points in 2023. In 2024, he only had 1 game with 20 or more points. You know, he and Drake Maye are likely the only two quarterbacks to score 150 fantasy points and only have 1 game with 20 points. That's not good. That's not the CJ Stroud we saw in the rookie year. Stroud had 6 games with 300 passing yards in 2023, 2024, 2. You know, he took on the second most sacks. It took by Caleb Williams. Took on the second most sacks. Now he's without Laramie Tunsil. I know that they added some weapons, but these are not significant upgrades for CJ Stroud here. I'm not a believer in CJ Stroud, and it's not to say that he's not a good NFL quarterback. It's to say he's not in a good fantasy football situation. So that is why I've got CJ Stroud sitting there at number 22. Sorry, not sorry, but that's not going to change that great for me. And if it winds up blowing in my face, it's fine. But I think that there's a happy medium between where he finished in his rookie year and where he's finished last year. And I think we see more towards the back end before things get better. We'll go into another quarterback here. It's going to be Bryce Young of the Carolina Panthers, ranked as my QB 23, currently going off the board as a QB 25, ADP of 17th round, 11th pick of that round. Finished as a QB 20 last year. You know, he didn't have his first top 12 week until week 12. In the 7 games before that, he only averaged 7.1 points. That's disgusting. Obviously, we know about the benching. They brought in the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton. Now, from week 12 on, when Bryce Young had that first 20-point game, he went on to average 20.7 points on a per-game basis. I think that was a wake-up call to get benched, but I do think that he will be better off being in a Dave Canales offense. I think it'll take care of him more. So I like him in this spot. Again, same thing. This isn't a guy that's going to be on a cover of Fantasy Football Magazine in 2026, but this is a quarterback that I think will be more consistent than he was last year, even though I have him finishing a few spots back of where he did last year. There is also competition at the position. So not the toughest division in the world either. So I will shoot my shot on Bryce Young. The last quarterback I'll go into, and this doesn't take long because we all know why. Tua Tagovailoa is my QB 24 with the Miami Dolphins. Listen, he's currently going off the board as a QB 23. He's got an ADP of 16.01. Finished as a quarterback 21 last season, but was ranked 16th in points per game with 16.5. If you could sit here and tell me, hey, Tua's healthy for the whole season, then he's so much higher in my rankings. He is, because I think he could be effective if he's healthy. But I can't rely on that. I haven't been able to rely on that. There's not only the concussion issues, he's got injured with other things. And I also just don't love the situation in Miami. I think there's going to be certain games in which Tua defies those particular odds. Has a big game with Tyreek Hill, has a big game with Jalen Waddle. Those things are still possible. It's not a cesspool in Miami, but I can't trust consistency between what's going on around the team and between the health of the quarterback. So with that in mind, He's quarterback 24, and to be honest, there's other guys I wanted to put ahead of him. I mean, obviously, if Matthew Stafford doesn't have a back problem, he's in my top 24. Sam Darnold's out on the outside looking in. There's some other quarterbacks you're probably thinking of that are on the outside looking in, but I can't trust them. So that will round out my top 24 quarterbacks will be Tua Tagovailoa. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Feel free to comment if you like. Feel free to share it. Feel free to like and subscribe. Until next time, folks, stay thirsty, be kind to one another. We'll catch you on the flip side. Cheers.